International law just got dicey for big carbon polluters, and Australia, darlings, that's us.
It's a temperature check on the climate crisis.
I'm Hayden from Climate 200, and in case you missed it, recently the International Court of Justice ruled that a clean, healthy and sustainable environment is a human right. Countries that don't tackle their greenhouse gas emissions, including the production and consumption of fossil fuels, could now be liable for climate harms and have to pay up. Australia argued against this ruling, by the way, and sided with other major fossil fuel exporters like Saudi Arabia, China and the US, just to give you an idea of where our government is. So what does this all mean? Well, I spoke to the Grat Fund, who are lawyers who work in environmental law all the time, and they told me that this kind of is a fundamental shift in the vibe. Basically, rulings from the ICJ, while not binding, do set the tone and expectations across the globe. And now to not follow those obligations by, say, approving a massive gas project that locks in emissions out past 2050, you're undermining international law, which is bad. Basically, for countries like Australia, it puts a whole lot more pressure on us to cut our emissions. Isabel, the executive director of the Grat Fund, said, "Communities around the world are increasingly bringing climate cases to courts of all levels. The facts are already on their side, and now the ICJ's landmark ruling provides even more legal scaffolding for courts to rule in their favour. The walls are closing in on polluting states like Australia." Meanwhile, in Australia, we've actually recently had two significant climate cases. In New South Wales, the courts overturned the approval of the state's largest coal mine expansion because they didn't consider the effect of the emissions. That's a powerful legal precedent, and it was brought forward by the community. The second is the Australian climate case in our federal court. It found, unfortunately, under current laws, the government does not owe a duty of care to Torres Strait Islanders. Oh, and by the way, this case was brought forward by Indigenous elders Uncle Paul and Uncle Pabai from the community. However, the court did find that previous governments didn't set their emissions reduction targets in line with science and that action was needed, saying there could be little if any doubt that the Torres Strait Islands and their traditional inhabitants will face a bleak future if urgent action is not taken to address climate change and its impacts. And this is where independents come in, because what would have made a huge difference in this case is if there were laws in this country that said that the government has a duty to protect us and future generations from climate change. Side note, it's crazy that that doesn't exist already, right? Luckily, there's not only one, but dos, that's two in Spanish, bills on the table right now introduced by independents Sophie Scamps and David Pocock, trying to do just that, and you can find out more about those in the caption. But this is why independents who care about us and the climate are so important. Lastly, this ruling from the ICJ means there's big pressure on the Australian government to set an ambitious 2035 emissions reduction goal, which independents have also been pushing really hard for, but there's a whole other video on that, so follow us for more.